and the quiet hollow where mist clings to bamboo and the mountains keep their secrets. The villagers say stories travel like smoke, thin, floating, and impossible to catch once they rise. Still, some stories refuse to vanish. They linger in the thatch, in the songs of women bent over their looms, and in the long looks elders cast toward the trees. Two such stories were told together for many seasons, one of a wife who could not leave a mystery untouched, and another of a necklace that returned at the cost of a life. They begin where all simple tragedies begin, with love that arrives too quickly. A young woman whose laugh made the river hush fell in love the day a stranger came to their village. He was handsome in the way twilight is handsome, soft and sudden, with a smile that seemed to know the right moment to appear. He courted her with handfuls of wildflowers and songs that carried from one hut to the next. She accepted him as girls of 16, and hope often accepts such things, without looking for the shadow beneath the light. They married in the village's small clearing. For a time the house sang with contentment, the churning of rice, the soft chatter of neighbors, and the warm weight of two people who believed the world was made for them. Yet the man walked with a secret rhythm. He left before the first light and came back only at dusk. He carried a small leather bag which he hung high on a peg and touched with a care that turned the eyes of his wife to questions. "Do not touch it," he said once, clasping her hands with earnestness that could have been prayer. "Do not ask where I go. You must trust me." To the woman, trust was a bright coin she had given freely at first, but days turned to weeks and the coin grew worn under the pressure of curiosity. She tried to hush the pulling inside her chest, but curiosity is a slow, tireless animal. It gnawed at her in the fields, at the market, in the quiet between spoonfuls of stew. She pictured his absence joining with the hollow of the bag, imagined a mistress, a lie, a life built on a stranger's hours. One morning, when dawn was still blue and the village dogs had not yet lifted their heads, she followed him. Her feet knew the quiet paths. Her breath came in shallow hills of mist. From behind a bamboo and a folded sheet of fog, she watched him lay the leather sack down in the field and kneel as if to pray or to plant. The thing that slid out of the bag was not a man. It was a great caterpillar, slick, pale as the underside of a banana leaf. Enormous as a child and deliberate as a plow. She could have turned and run, could have shouted the name of the man she loved. Instead, she folded her hands upon her mouth and watched as the caterpillar worked the soil with the same careful motions she had seen him make when he harvested. Her heart cracked like thin ice. That night the man returned. He came to her like a man and made her laugh with a story. She fed him, she laughed, and she pretended she did not know. When his breathing settled in sleep, something in her that had been burning all day flamed into action. She stole his bag, and trembling with the heat of a woman who finally crosses a private line, she emptied it. Inside lay a shed skin, long, translucent, and impossibly like the fine husk left behind after a growing thing sloughs itself. She did not know the word for mercy then. She did the only thing panic taught her. She threw the skin into the hearth. The flames caught quickly. It hissed and left a thin, sour smoke that curled like a complaint into the rafters. He woke with a cry that tore through the house. The man rolled and fell as if the sound of the fire had found a place inside him. He grabbed at his throat, searched for a shape with hands that remembered the bag, and then, with the last light leaking from his eyes, he whispered, "Why did you not trust me?" She could only watch the life fold from him, the way a leaf falls when frost takes it. The villagers say she wept until her tears were stones, hard in her mouth, heavy on her lips. The woman who had once followed her husband into the day was left to live in the same house with the bag's peg empty, and the question of whether love alone was enough to bind the small things of life. The second story the elders tell begins with a journey, not across miles but across the slow movement from girlhood into womanhood. Ente. A father came home with a gift, a carnelian necklace, its beads like warm embers threaded onto twine. He was a trader, they said, who had crossed rivers and hills. The stone was rare and polished until some of its edges were glass. He gave it to his daughter at the turning of her 16th year, a token that the world now watched her as someone who could be promised in marriage. She loved the necklace with a devotion that seemed innocent. Each night, before sleep, she unstrung the day by touching it and looking at the fire through its red glows. It became part of her face, the way a laugh becomes part of a person's mourning. One afternoon, sent to the communal water to wash the day's linens, she tucked the necklace beneath a stone while she bathed. She meant to be quick, but the river and the sun had plans of their own. She lingered over the water's coolness, and by the time she dried the last hem and folded the last cloth, the light was the kind that slides toward the hills to sleep. The necklace was gone. She searched until her fingers blistered against wet rock. The stream went on as if it had never known about loss. The letting go of the necklace felt like a small death. She could already taste the reproach at home. In her desolation, she did what children sometimes do when the world is too large and sharp. She cursed the world with a prayer grown thin and impatient. She called out to the spirits of the water, not with offerings or with the old measured words, but with a raw bargain. "Oh, spirits," she cried, voice thin as a reed, "take my life, but return my necklace." Words once spoken can become a debt, the elders remind us. The girl did not expect the way the earth listens. From beneath a slate the necklace gleamed forth, half hidden, as if it had been laying aside the time until her voice reached it. She seized it and hurried home, laughter clumsy on her lips because it had been so easily found. But ease is often the sign of a short bargain. In the days after the necklace returned, her skin grew hot, and a fever came like a thief in the night. The herbs of the healer were placed. The chants sounded, and the steam of leaves rose and fell like breath. Nothing turned the fever aside. She wasted, cheeks hollowing, eyes losing the small bright shapes of the world. On the morning when the air felt brittle, and the village moved in the way one moves when a thread hangs thin, the herbalist shook his head. The cost had come due. The girl told her mother, with the honesty of someone whose small world was going, of the bargain she had made by the water. Her mother listened, and then the two of them sat in a silence. So Munja said, large the house could not hold it. By dusk the girl's hands were still, and the necklace lay across her breast like a string of sunset. When the woman who had once followed a husband into a field, now older, quieter, and carrying a weight, the villagers named Sorrow, heard the tale. She felt the chill of memory creep along her spine. She understood, more than any else perhaps, the way a small choice breaks into more than a single life. So the stories are wound together now. The woman who burned a skin she should not have burned. The man who wore the skin to live among them. The girl who offered her breath for a band of Carnelian. They are told by mothers at dusk as warnings and by old men over rice as lessons. The mountain listens and keeps the balance between what humans claim and what they leave untouched. There are threads common to both. Tales. The same sharp lessons stitched through in different cloth. The first is about trust. Sometimes trust is fragile, and sometimes trusting is the only way to let another be what they must be. The second is about words, bargaining with spirits, even in anger. Is like lighting a lamp in a house already full of oil. Something must be given. And woven between both is the quiet, terrible truth that some boundaries, whether the bag hung on the peg or the unspoken code between living and spirit, are not meant to be broken by fear or haste. When the village tells these stories, they clear their throats and soften their voices. They do not tell them to frighten children without reason, but to remind everyone where the edges lie, the edge of curiosity, the edge of bargaining, the edge of how far one can reach into another life. Sometimes, an elder will stand and say, simply, "We must live with what the spirits and people give us, and with what they take." Then the younger ones lean in, for there is warmth in gatherings where wisdom is shared. They want the story because stories teach the hands how not to tremble. In the end, the hills hold these two small tragedies like two polished stones in a pouch, one smooth with the rubbing of time, the other stained with the memory of fire. Both are heavy enough to be felt when you sit quiet in the night and remember that every secret left alone, and every promise spoken aloud has both power and consequence. So if ever you visit the misted hollow, bring with you the hush of respect. Keep your hands from the things the other has set aside. Speak with care. And when the river sings, remember that the world is listening, and always, always she remembers what was asked of her. End of tale.